Hello everyone, this is Ashok. Welcome to our channel Ashok IT. In this video, we will understand how to develop Springboot REST API to perform CRUD operations with MySQL database. If you are new to Springboot, I suggest you to go through our Springboot full course playlist. Here, we uploaded the videos related to Spring Boot introduction, creating the Spring Boot project, how internally Boot project will work, how to deploy Boot applications into cloud, how to Dockerize the Spring Boot, how to create a simple REST API, all those stuff. Alright, let's get started. Here, we are going to develop a REST API to perform CRUD operations with MySQL database. Our final project is going to look like this. Database we are using as MySQL. To communicate with the database, we will use a repository concept with the help of DataJPA, and we will write a service class which will contain our business logic, and REST controller will be available. In that we will write the methods and will map them to HTTP protocol methods, and we will have a binding class which will represent our request and response data. pom.xml file will be available to configure dependencies required for our application like MySQL driver, web starter, Lombok dependency, etc. We will have application.yml. That file will be created in the Spring Boot when we create a boot project. In that file, we will configure our data source properties with which database we want to communicate. The database properties should be configured in our application. And finally, once the project development is completed, we will use Postman tool to test our REST API. By using Postman, we can send HTTP request. I hope you are good with project components. Alright, without wasting our time, let's start our development. Here, I'm going to create one project using ToolSuite IDE, file, new, Spring Starter project I'm going to create. I'm giving the name for this project as Spring Boot REST MySQL app. Spring Boot REST MySQL app. Click on next. Here we need to select several dependencies to create our project. I'm going to select web starter. This web starter will provide embedded container also to run our application. I'm selecting DataJPA. By using this we can develop the repositories to communicate with the database. I'm selecting MySQL driver to communicate with MySQL database. People who want to connect with Oracle database, they need to use Oracle driver. Here I'm using MySQL database, so I'm using MySQL driver. Lombok dependency to generate the setters getters required for our binding classes. DevTools dependency to restart our server when we made some code changes. So these are the 5 dependencies I'm selecting: web starter, DataJPA starter, MySQL driver, Lombok, and DevTools. Alright, next click on finish. So with this, our MySQL Spring Boot MySQL REST application is getting created. Once this project is created, then we need to start our development. Before that, I want to configure data source properties in our project. Application properties file is created. Nowadays, properties files are replaced with YMLs, right? So I'm going to convert that properties file to YML. Inside this YML, I need to configure my database properties. As I told that, I will be using MySQL database in this video. So in MySQL, you can execute the query show databases, use SBMS. SBMS is my schema name, show tables, what all the existing tables in the database it is displaying. In this, I'm going to use one table called course details, but currently if you see the table is not available, my application will create the table dynamically in the database. Now, these database properties we will configure in application.yml. To save our time, I have saved this data source properties file details. Now, let me configure those properties here. So, data source username, password, URL, driver class, and auto DDL update. This is used to generate our table dynamically. Show SQL, whatever the queries that are generated by our application, to print those queries on the console, I'm using this. And next, I'm going to create one binding class which is used to represent our data. I'm going to take that class inside a package called binding, class name giving as course. Now, I'm going to take 3 properties here: private, integer, ID, private string name, and private double price. Three properties, three variables I'm taking to generate the setters and getters using Lombok annotation @data, and to represent this class as an entity I'm using one annotation @entity. To map this class with a database table I'm giving @table annotation. @table is not mandatory, guys. When you don't write the table annotation, it will use class name as a table name, class name as table name. Here I'm writing @id annotation. ID represents that this column is a primary key mapped column. This variable is mapped with a primary key column in the table, and generated value, I want to generate the value for this column automatically. For that, generator, we can give generator strategy, we can configure for that. Strategy is equal to identity. As it is a MySQL database, we can use identity generator. @data, a Lombok annotation will generate setters getters for the variables. @entity to represent this as a persistence related component. @table to map our class name with the table name. Table is not mandatory. If you don't write the table name, class name will be considered as table name. @id, it is used to represent this ID variable is mapped with primary key column in the database. Let me give it as a course ID. Good. String name, it is a normal variable, will be mapped with one column in the database table, and price variable mapped with one column. If you want to map this variable name also with a particular column name, you can write @column annotation, but that is optional. Good. So this class I will be using as a binding, as well as I'm going to use it as a entity class to persist the data. Then create a repository. Repository is used to perform operations with the database. I'm going to create a repository with the name course repository in the .repo package. This repository will extend the properties from JPA repository. The advantage with the data JPA is it is providing ready-made methods to perform the CRUD operations. We no need to write the logic. Just use JPA repository, that is extends JPA repository. It is expecting what is your entity class. Our entity class is course, right? And what is the type of the primary key? I will be taking a generic, that is serializable, as a type of the primary key value. Public interface course repository extends JPA repository. JPA repository is a predefined repository available in data JPA. Here you can write @repository annotation, but it is optional. Even if you don't write it, at the time of project startup, JPA repositories will be scanned by our Springboot, and they will provide implementation class for our interface in the runtime by using proxy. Here in the JPA repository, there are couple of methods available, like find all method, sort with find all by ID, save all, flush method, save and flush. There are several methods available. We can access those methods from our interface now, because our interface is extending properties from JPA repository. Good. So JPA repository is ready. So if you observe, our repository is ready, database is ready. We configure database properties also in the YML file. Now we need to create our service interface to write our logic. Let me create one interface, course service. I'm creating this interface in a separate package called service. Now in this I'm going to write the methods public string upsert. I will be taking one method with a name called upsert. What is upsert? Upsert means it is a polymorphic method. This method will be used for insertion as well as update. If single method is performing both insertion and updation, that method is called as upsert method. Insert plus update, that is called upsert. I'm using the method name as upsert. Single method will perform insert and update based on the primary key value. And I'm taking one method public string save course. Good. Sorry, save and insertion will be done by upsert method only. So here I'm going to write one method which is used to get the particular course based on the given ID, get by ID. So I'm going to take integer course ID as a parameter, and I will be taking one more method which will give all the courses available in the table, get all courses. Good. And one more method I will be taking, which is used to delete the particular course. Public string delete by ID. For that I am passing course ID as a input. So save plus update will be taken care by our upsert method. Get by ID will take the ID as input, will give that particular course record. Get all courses will give all the existing courses in the database table. Delete by ID to delete the record based on the given ID. Now let me implement this interface. New class course service IMPL. It is going to implement that interface. That means we need to override all the abstract methods available in our service interface. Perfect. Now to represent this service class as a Spring Bean, I'm going to write one annotation @service. This service should communicate with the repository. Service class methods should talk to repository methods. So repository should be injected into our service through auto wiring. I'm going to perform dependency injection by using auto wide annotation. Private course repository. In multiple ways we can do that dependency injection, guys. So one is by using setter injection, another one is through constructor injection, and third one is field injection. Now I am using auto wide annotation. Course repository is an interface. Sir, where is the implementation? You no need to write the implementation. That's the beauty of data JPA. You no need to write the implementation for this interface. JPA will provide the implementation. That implementation class object will be injected into our service class. Good. Now upsert method. So how we are going to perform this upsert operation, insertion plus update? You don't need to do anything. Just you call repository dot save. I'm going to pass course object. Here I'm going to return success. Good. Sir, here save method internally it will perform upsert operation. Whatever the object you are passing, if that object contains primary key value, then it is going to update the object, update the record. Whatever the object you are passing, if that object does not contain the primary key, then it is going to insert the record. Upsert nothing but insert or update based on PK. So whatever the entity object you are passing for this repository method, if this entity object contains the primary key, then it is going to update the record. If this entity object does not contain the primary key, then it is going to insert the record. Repository save method. That repository save method is a upsert method. Both for insertion as well as for update, we are going to use the same method. That's why I'm also writing a single method in my service interface called upsert. Good. Next one, get by ID. Based on the given ID, we need to retrieve the record and we need to return that record. Good. For that, we are going to use course repository dot find by ID. There is a predefined method which is find by ID. That method is returning optional object. Optional objects are introduced in Java 1.8 to avoid null pointer exceptions. If that method returns directly one object, if it is null, if you perform operation on the null, you will get null pointer exception. Now when we go for optional is like a container. First we need to check that in that optional our entity object is present or not. If it is present, then only we are going to get that. Find by ID dot get and return that. I'm going to call find by ID method in the repository dot find by ID. With the given primary key value, it will try to get the record. With that given ID, if record is available, that will be stored into optional. If the record is not available, our optional will be empty. Now, once we have retrieved that, I'm calling find by ID dot is present. If this condition is satisfied, that means record is presented in the optional object. We can get that record by calling get method. Same record I am returning from my method. If this condition is not satisfied, then it is going to return null object. Record is not available. Good. Get all courses. It is very simple. To get all the courses from the table, there is a method directly, find all method. That find all method will return list of entities. My method also should return list of entities. Repository find all. Find all is a predefined method. So I'm going to directly call that find all method and I'm going to return that. Good. This method will retrieve all the records available in the table and it will return all those records. And next one, delete by ID. Based on the primary key, we need to delete that record. First, let me check with the given ID, record is available or not. Course repository dot exists by ID. In this repository, JPA repository, there is a method called exists by ID. Exists by ID method will tell you with the given primary key, record is presented in the database or not. If it is present, this method will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. With the given ID, if the record is available, my condition will be satisfied. Then I will come inside the insert if condition. Then I am going to call course repo dot delete by ID. Whatever the ID we got as input, that ID I am passing to delete by ID method. Suppose, for example, with the given ID, if the record is not available, it is going to return saying that no record found. It will simply return a message, no record found. If it is available, then it will return delete success. Delete success. Perfect. Let me correct it. Yeah. So this is our delete method. Delete method is used to delete the record available in the table. Exists by ID. Based on the given ID, it will delete the record. And this method get all courses to retrieve all the courses available in the table by using find all method. Find by ID to get a single record based on the given ID. I'm calling repository.find by ID. That will return optional object. And upsert method, this is our method which is internally calling repository.save method. Save method is the upsert method which will perform insert or update based on the given entity object. If you give the object with the primary key value, with the primary key if record is available, it will update. If not available, it will insert. So this is our service interface. To represent this class as a Spring Bean, I'm using @service annotation. Inside the service, we are injecting repository interface. This interface does not have implementation. We are not writing that. JPA will take care of that. JPA will create the implementation in the runtime and it will inject that implementation object into our service bean in the runtime. Perfect. Finally, let us create our REST controller to deal with this. Good. So I'm going to use a package in.ashokit.rest course REST controller. In that we are going to write the methods to call our service layer methods. To represent this class as a REST controller, we are going to use @REST controller annotation. As we have seen in the diagram, REST controller methods will talk to service. Service should be injected into REST controller. Service will talk to repository. Repository injected into service. Service should be injected into REST controller through dependency injection. How can we inject it? By using auto wiring. Private course service. I'm going to take the variable name as course service. Let's specify @auto-wide annotation. So this course service interface reference variable I'm using. IOC container will find implementation class for this service interface. Will inject that class object into our REST controller. First, let me write one method, public string, or we can take a response entity also. Public response entity as a string. I'm going to use one method called create course. Create course is a method. That method is expecting course data. Which course it has to create, that course data it is expecting in the request body. So let us take the annotation as @request body to read the data from the request body. In the request body, JSON data will come from the postman. That JSON data will be converted into our Java object. Let's bind this method to post request by using post mapping /course. Now it is going to call course service dot upsert. Service method we are calling upsert method. That method will return a record. Response. It is returning some response that is status. That is a status response. Now here I need to return the response back to the client, right? REST API will be accessed by client application. To return the response to the client, I'm using return new response entity. Whatever the response that we want to return, we can send the response body, status code. HTTP status created. Post method is used to create the new record. So I'm returning the status with the created, that is 201. I'm taking the request body, I'm going to insert that record and I'm going to return the response with the HTTP status code as 201. This is post request method. Similarly, let's write one method which will return the response of one single course based on the ID. For that I'm taking response entity of course get course. It is taking integer course ID. That course ID we will receive as a path variable. To read the data from the URL, I'm using annotation called path variable. Map this method to get request by using get mapping /course ID. Now simply call service layer method course service dot get by ID. Whatever the ID we received in the URL, same ID we are passing to service layer method. Service layer method will talk to repository, will get that record. That record I am going to return from my REST controller. Return new response entity. Response I'm sending course data. Response I'm going to send course data, comma status code OK. It is a get request. HTTP status I'm giving as OK. For post request I'm giving created 201. For get request I'm giving OK. That means it is success. Similarly, we need to write one more method which will retrieve all the records from the table and will send to the UI. For that I'm writing one more method, public list, or you can say take response entity. You can take the response entity and you can take a list of course. Good. Get all courses. Get all courses. Perfect. Here I'm going to call course service dot find all or get all. What is the method we have written? Get all courses. This method will return all courses as a collection that I want to return from my REST controller. Return new response entity of all courses status HTTP status dot OK. Good. This method I'm binding to a get request get mapping /courses. When you send a get request to this URL pattern, it will retrieve all the courses and it will send back in the form of JSON. Next one, we need one method to update the record and delete the record. So public, now I can copy this method. Instead of post mapping, I will give it as a put mapping, guys. Put mapping. So here update course. Insertion and updation both will take the course data and both are going to call service layer upset method. Upset method is a polymorphic method. It will decide whether to insert or update based on the given ID. So this is put request method. Update course, taking the course data, calling service.upset. As I told you, upset method will perform insertion or update based on the given data. If you give primary key, it will update. If you don't give the primary key, it will insert. Then similarly, we need one method to delete the record. Get by ID is there now. Similarly, based on the ID only, we need to delete the record. That I'm going to map with delete mapping. At the rate delete mapping, course with the ID, delete course. We need the ID in the URL. We are taking that as a path variable, service dot delete by ID. That's it. With the given ID, here I am calling course service dot delete by ID. What that delete method is going to return? Delete method will return status. That means message, success or failure. That status I'm going to return as a response from this REST controller method. So delete mapping method, which is expecting course ID as a input, Based on that, we are trying to delete the record. With this, our REST controller is ready. So final, our project is completed. We are able to create a repository. We are able to create service, and we created REST controller, one binding class, dependencies added in the form.xml, data source properties configured in the application.yml. Now let us test this application by using Postman. So first let me run this project, guys. As we already discussed in the previous videos, Springboot application will execute in the embedded container. By default, Apache Tomcat will be used as embedded container. It will run on the port number 8080. Good. Application is getting started. Once it's started, we can test that application in the Postman. Let us see. Database table is getting created or not. We configured auto DDL. That means database table should be created. Failed to configure a data source. Attribute is not specified. No data source could be configured. It is not able to read our data source properties that we configured. Let's update that project. Maven update. We changed it from properties file to YML and we added the data. After that, we forgot to update the project. Let's update our project. Maven update I have given. Once the project update is completed, then we can run the project once again. Yeah, update got completed. Right click on the project, run as boot app. Yes, now you can see that, guys. Create table course details. So our table got created in the database. Check in the database, select star from course details. Our database table got created, but there is no data. We need to insert the data in the database now. Got it? Good. Now, table got created in the database. Now our application is also started. Application is running. Now let's try to test this application by using Postman. First it is running in the embedded server, right? When we started that application, it is running in the embedded server. Good. Go to Postman. Let me make a post request first. Enter the URL localhost colon 8080/course. We need to send the data in the request body, raw data in the JSON format. I will send the data in the JSON format, key and value, ID. ID I no need to pass because it is auto generated. Name, let me give the course name as Java. Let me give the course price. So I'm giving the course price as 3500 as a double value. Good. I'm giving the data in the request body and I'm sending a post request to this URL. Click on send button. When I send that request, you can see we received the response as success with the status code as 201. Resource is created. Check in the database. Earlier the table was empty. Now select this and run this query. Now you can see one record is inserted in the database, 1 Java 3500. Let me insert one more record in the database, DevOps. I'm giving this as 4500. Click on send. One more request I have sent. Check in the database, select star from course details, run this query. Now we can see DevOps record is also inserted. Now guys, let me check course/1. I'm going to send a get request with the course ID in the input. Get request I'm sending, click on send. Based on the given course ID, we are able to retrieve the record and we are getting the response in the JSON format. If I'm giving course ID as 1, I'm getting the Java record. If I give the course ID as 2, then I'm going to get DevOps record. For example, if I send a request to /courses, get request with the /courses, send that, I'm getting all the courses. The 2 records inserted in the table, first record and second record, 2 records we retrieved as a JSON. That means we tested 3 methods as of now. Post method we tested, that is working as expected. We are able to insert the record by using this post method. We are able to retrieve the single record based on the given ID, and we are able to retrieve all the records by using this courses URL. Let us test put method and delete method also. For put method, we need to send the course ID in the input, guys. Go to put method. Let us pass the data in the request body. Here course ID Java. Java price we have 3500. Now let me change to 5500. I'm just trying to update the price of the course. Earlier when I'm trying to insert the record, I passed only name and price. That's why it inserted the record. Upsert operation. Now I am passing ID also. Put/course. Put/course. Now once again observe, select star from table name. Here Java course price inserted with 3500. Now I'm sending the course ID in the input, name and price as 5500. Click on send. Now see the response, success. We got the success response with 200 status code. For insertion we got 201. For update we got 200 status code. Go to database, select star from course details, run this. Now you see Java course price changed to 5500. Are we able to update? Yes. By using put request, we are able to update the record. By using post request, we are able to insert the record. By using get request, we are able to retrieve the records. Final one, delete. Go to here, click on delete, select the delete request /course/2. Click on send. I'm sending a delete request, delete success. I got 200 response. Go to the database, select the table. Yes, DevOps record got deleted. Second record is deleted because I have given the ID as 2. Only we have one record. Now, if I give one also, course/1 with delete, click on send. That record also got deleted. Check in the database. Yes, table is empty because all the records got deleted. I hope you understood how we tested this application by using Postman. Now this architecture we are able to complete, right? Postman for testing, REST controller, service, repository, YML file to configure data source, pom.xml to configure dependencies, binding class to represent our data. So I hope you are able to understand how to perform CRUD operations with MySQL database by using Springboot REST API. Alright, thanks for watching this video. I will push this code into Git repository. You can clone that code into your system and you can try this. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click on bell icon to get more updates on our upcoming videos. I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye bye. Take care.